up, you guys? The Curious Owl here, and today I have my August wrap-up. Right off the bat, August was not my best month when it came to reading. A lot of stuff kind of happened toward the latter half of the month that just kind of like bombarded me with a lot of stress. I started up a new job that is basically going to be in the school system, and so then I'm having to, do that. And I started up my classes for the fall semester, and so that's been, getting that prepared and set up. This whole month was just full of stress. And so stressed to the point where I couldn't even enjoy reading. And so I was very slumpy throughout the entire month. I am still in the middle of a lot of books that I meant to finish in the month, but just could not get through for the life of me because of the fact that I'd been so stressed. And you'll see I really wasn't that active a whole heck of a lot in terms of like the last couple of weeks specifically because I'd been so overwhelmed. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to get back into it here now that as I'm filming this, it is Labor Day weekend, and I'll hopefully be able to get back into it here in the next week or so. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the stats for the month. In terms of pages, we had a total of 1,917 pages read and a total of 23 hours, 2 minutes, and 31 seconds worth of audiobooks. I read 4 books over the course of this month, or at least finished them, 2 of which were from physical copies, 1 was an ebook, and 1 was an audiobook. 3 of the books I had were from my personal library, and 1 was borrowed. As far as star ratings, we had 2 5 stars and 2 4 stars. So while I didn't really read a whole heck of a lot in terms of like quantity of books, the quality was still really there, which is always, like, I think more important than reading through a lot of books. First thing I did was actually read a poem, and that was from my Edgar Allan Poe collection. I read The Raven for the full moon readathon that was going on in the course of August. So this one technically was only like 4 pages, so I didn't read this entire thing. I only read the poem that was from this, but The Raven is one of my favorite poems of all time. I love its exploration of grief and how someone can really become all encompassed in their grief and how easily it is to let that kind of take over your life and it cause you to kind of slowly go insane in some ways. And so I just have always loved The Raven ever since I first read it when I was in high school, and I've continued to love Poe's work to this day, and will still find good reasons to read it, especially during spooky time season. Next, I ended up reading an ebook, which was a mafia romance called The Wolf and His Sheep. I did do a TikTok kind of talking about this as it was part of my unread book project. This one was a 4-star for me. I really, really liked it a lot. I think that there was a lot that was interesting, and like it wasn't like super, crazy. There are some trigger warnings in this for like, there's talks of possible rape, basically, where like it's being threatened upon somebody in a sense. And this is following a woman who is basically being married off to a mafia like heir to this dynasty, basically, because her father is in a lot of debt, and so this family decides that they're going to pay off his debt by having his daughter marry the son that is available in this family. And he is, your typical dark, brooding kind of guy, doesn't really let anyone get close to him, all that stuff. And the main character, our female main character, is an opera singer. And this has got very much kind of like Italian vibes to it, in terms of the fact that the way that the vibe of the place that they're in, it's never really explicitly stated, but it does feel like it's more Italian based because of the huge opera scene that is involved in it, as well as the kind of countryside aspects that are brought into this. It feels very similar to what I would assume the Italian countryside would feel like, at least in my opinion. Maybe that's because I've been watching too much of The Sopranos. I don't really know. You can make your decision based on it when you read it yourself. But I will say that it is a little triggering in some capacities. It's definitely a dark romance. It is not necessarily all daisies and sunshine. It is very much, something that is like rooted in darkness, and it is rooted in some really dark and unpleasant things. Like there's a lot that's brought up in the story that is like very, very triggering for a lot of people. So do go into it with a little bit of that in terms of expectations. Next was my audiobook that I read this month, which was Don't Ever Tell by Brandon Massey. I'm slowly getting through Brandon Massey's catalog ever since Blackoween in July. This one was very similar to another book Brandon Massey wrote, which was The Exes, except this one follows a main character whose wife is being targeted by her ex-husband, who was in jail for trying to kill her several years prior. And you learn that there's a lot of secrets around the ex-wife in terms of like what she's kept from her new husband. So when the wife finds out that her ex-husband has escaped from prison, she hightails it and it disappears. And so her husband, our main character, is trying to figure out where she is, where she could have gone in order to try to protect her and figure out what the heck happened between her and her ex-husband. And meanwhile, we get the ex-husband's perspective of, you know, leading up to finding her, finding the family, and get revenge basically. So yeah, it's a very similar story to The Exes where it's involving an ex-spouse, but this is very different in a lot of ways because the ex-husband has a lot of things about him that are different than the ex-wife in The Exes. The setup is kind of similar, but the actual execution of the story is very different. So if you like The Exes, you will probably like Don't Ever Tell and vice versa, but they're not 100% the same, which is really nice to see. That one I also gave a 5 out of 5 stars too. I found that Brandon Massey so far can really do not a lot wrong. I think that there is something to be said about how just encapsulating his stories can be as thrillers, and it's very, very fun to read his books, and so I'm very excited to continue to read more of his and see what else he can come up with. And finally, the last book I finished in the month was Hellbent. This was my book club read with my mom and my sister. We did pick up the Alex Stern duology in July and continued it into August with Hellbent. This one I gave a 4-star to. I enjoyed this a lot more than I did Ninth House. I gave Ninth House a 4-star as well, but this is closer to like, I think a 4.5, maybe 4.75, whereas Ninth House was more of like a lower 4-star. This one was much more intense immediately in the story, whereas Ninth House, it took a long time for there to be any action, which was my main gripe with it. And this one, a lot of the action picks up like almost immediately, and it kind of continues over the course of the story. I will say that there's so much to the series that I feel like I'm missing. I feel like there's a lot of things that I am not 100% clear on and would be really important for me to do a reread of any kind, especially if I go to read more in this world, or if there's going to be more in the Alex Stern series, which I don't think there is. But if there ever was to be something that was going to come out within this world, I would probably have to go back and reread Ninth House and Hellbent, because there are so many things that are just very confusing about the houses and how things work. You get the general premise of everything, you get the general idea of it, but some of the specifics kind of go over your head in some ways. And so I think that that's going to always be my main gripe with that in particular, is that I feel like I just got lost a lot in terms of the technicalities and the, you know, specificities of the houses and what they do and what exactly means what and all these things. But very much enjoyed this one, more so than Ninth House, but still ended up giving it a 4-star. So there you guys go. Those are all the books that I ended up reading in the course of August. Again, not too many, but definitely some quality reads. I am really happy with what I did end up finishing, and I'm just going to end up carrying all the other books I'm currently working on over into September. Many of them I'm nearly done with, and so I should probably get them done within the first few days of the month if I can sit down and focus long enough. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys.